Yesterday around the strategic vision that I think is going to be an important framing document for our conversation. And my hope today, just my expectations today, is that we have some substantive conversations back and forth. We keep it a little bit loose. We talk about the goals and the commitments in this document, but also we talk about what does that mean for us as a board for our next year. How do we set priorities? Are these the goals that we agree to, right? We've accepted the report yesterday, but that doesn't mean that these are our goals. So I think we want to really dive into them, understand what they mean and the implications of those goals, what it would mean in terms of the Chancellor's office, and what it would mean in terms of us holding ourselves and our Chancellor accountable for achieving these goals. As we noted yesterday, they're quite aggressive. They're on a 5-year horizon, very ambitious. And so I believe in setting the bar high, but we do need to understand the implications of some of what we've set forth. So I am excited about really digging into this document. We're going to get a recap of it. We spent a lot of time on it yesterday, so I don't want to have a ton of presentations. I think we have 2 or 3 presentations that I'm going to be kicking Eli under the table, making sure they're nice and short, because the important thing is for us to be able to talk amongst ourselves and really get into a deep conversation about where we want to take the board for the next year, and hopefully a direction for the next several years. We need to kind of set a bold course and then stick to it and hold ourselves accountable. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Chancellor.
Right. Thank you, Board President Castellano. And by the way, the term short is a relative term, correct? So thank you to the members of the board. Thank you to the members of the Chancellor's Office staff and the Academic Senate and the public. Should we do a little introductions? Yes.
Sure, let's do it.
Why don't we do a quick introduction of everybody who's out there so that the board members know who's here. So we'll begin with the very eager Chancellor's Office team and with the very eager Vice Chancellor of Finance.
Mario Rodriguez.
Laura Mattoon. Sandy Freed.
Eric Skinner. Paul Feast. Jake Knapp.
Hello, Rhonda Moore. I'm the Dean in Student Services.
Joseph McCann at the Foundation.
Melissa Connor, also at the Foundation. Christina Castro, the liaison board. Oh, Sarah Berger.
Linda Collins, Career Ladders Project.
I'm John Stanton with the Academic Senate.
Julie Brittle with the Academic Senate.
Julie Adams with the Academic Senate.
Todd Boyd, I'm the Director of Management Information Systems at the Chancellor.
Great.
John Hetz, Director of Data Science for Educational Results Partnership and CalPass Plus.
Erin Gilmer, assistant to Chancellor.
And the very capable staff in the back.
Good team. Good team. All right. Good team.
All right. So thank you all for coming out. This is an important time for the Chancellor's Office team. So I want to thank the Board of Governors for the opportunity to talk about the strategic vision as we discuss all the way from the time that I had the pleasure of interviewing with this group to the time of our first board meeting together. It was always an interest of mine to try to set, to plant a flag of where we wanted to go and where we wanted to be in the next 5 years and beyond. And we wanted to bring together a lot of smart people who really cared about our mission, who cared about California. And so we set about doing that through the support of the foundation, and thanks to Amy Suppinger and Camille Etch and Sandy Freed for helping us get there. But I feel that this vision for success is that opportunity to plant a flag. And it certainly makes it easier for me in working with you to know where I need to get to, and allows me the opportunity to work with my team to bring together the best team that I can in pursuit of this agenda, and I think we can get there. I wouldn't put this document in front of you if I didn't think that we could do this. I honestly think that we can and will do this because I know how committed the faculty and staff of the California community colleges are. I've had the pleasure of working in this system a long time. I'm a product of this system, and I know that we can and will achieve not only the goals set forth in this document, but we will go beyond it. And it will not be easy. It will not be smooth sailing always, but at least it gives us, as the document puts it, a North Star, so that as the waves start to beat against us, as the wind changes direction, as we confront what ultimately will be a downturn in the economy and a new governor and a new legislative leadership and who knows what from Washington, D.C., we need a North Star so that we can all keep rowing in the same direction, not only at this table, but throughout the system. And this also sets forth a different point of view from the Chancellor's office in terms of what our role is. I think certainly Chancellor Scott and Chancellor Harris and even Chancellor Drummond before them, I think all saw the need to begin to face the Chancellor's office in a different direction. But, you know, each Chancellor has had to deal with certain circumstances. I think we have the opportunity right now, given the support we have from the governor, given the support we have from the legislature and from the people of California, to actually have a real opportunity to change the direction of the Chancellor's office and the system. And so I'd like to be as aggressive as the board is willing to be in pursuit of that goal. I think, you know, we have a window of opportunity where the state and the nation are really looking at community colleges as an answer to the challenges we face in every community in California. So with that, I'd like us to end the day by having the board come to consensus on the goals and commitments. We will bring them back to you so that you can officially adopt them at the upcoming meeting. And then that will become the basis for how you evaluate me, you know, the goals that I present to you in September, and of course how I evaluate my crack team over there. To refresh our memory and to ensure that we're thinking about the goals and commitments as we walk through the day, I'd like to ask Sandy Freed to just take a moment and walk us through one more time, briefly, specifically the goals and commitments, and just make sure that we're all operating from the same page as we walk through the day, because the hope is that the presentations that you will have and the discussions you will have will directly relate to the goals and commitments that are in the document. So I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Okay. I am alive. Okay. Good morning, Chair Estelano, Vice Chair Epstein, Chancellor Oakley, members of the board. Sandy Freed with the Success Center. And we handed out for you this document that specifically pulled out the goals and the commitments that are in the strategic vision, as well as the different suggestions for ways that the Chancellor's office can lead the system in this effort and support the colleges. So we thought this would be helpful in helping you focus in on exactly what the vision is calling for from the Chancellor's office. So I'll just quickly walk through the goals for you again and answer any questions anyone might have. The first is intended to increase our production of our graduates with degrees to meet the gap for skilled workers that the state will face. We need 2.4 million more skilled workers to meet our workforce needs by 2025. This goal gets there. The second goal does the same on the baccalaureate front. This would enable us to meet the state's need for 1.1 million more baccalaureate degrees by 2030. The third goal is focused on essentially efficiency, ensuring that our students are getting to their goals more quickly and more efficiently, reducing excess units, which also frees up space for new students to enter the system. The fourth goal is ensuring that we are providing the training and education and the support that students need to find jobs. So this would ask us to increase by 15% the number of our CTE graduates who claim employment in their field of study. And this is a survey that we conduct of our own students. So this is students answering for themselves. And the last two goals focus on equity gaps. The first focuses on closing the four areas mentioned in goals 1 through 4 for underrepresented students, closing the goal by 40% within 5 years and entirely within 10 years. And goal 6 applies to reducing those equity gaps among regions. So the how we get there are in the commitments.
Sandy, I'm sorry, on the first one, we increased by 20% the number who receive AAs or credentials. What was the number you said that will take us to?
2.4 million is the shortage we'll have by 2025.
And we will hit it if we,
Yes.
we will meet the gap, so it's 2.4 million. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So the first commitment is focusing on students' end goals, as well as creating pathways for students to meet those goals. This focuses a lot on course alignment and guided pathways, which you'll be hearing about in a bit, really ties directly into this student goal, as well as actually many of these goals. You'll see there, I won't spend time reading it, but you can see the suggestions that the strategic vision makes for how the Chancellor's office can lead the way. The second commitment calls on us to design our systems around students and their needs rather than asking students to navigate our systems. This is another one. I think when I spoke yesterday, I tried to give you some illustrations of some programs that are out there that follow these commitments. Promise programs are a good example of this. Well-designed promise programs that really try to align all of our systems of education around students' needs. The third is pairing high expectations with high support. This focuses on student support services and college readiness. And this goal, we know college readiness is a huge barrier. So this commitment calls for us to work closely with our K-12 colleagues to improve college readiness expectations, which differ between K-12 and higher education, working with them on planning, on intervening with students who are struggling, but also to continue the work that we've been doing on reforming our remedial education system. That is critical to student support. It's a huge barrier, and it also factors into our ability to close the equity gaps. I believe that this is also the commitment that talks about the fact that we have a significant proportion of students who are very vulnerable and the need to provide wraparound services and connect them to their local safety net services. Commitment 4, using data and inquiry and evidence-based solutions. The system has been moving in this area in recent years, but there's still much more to be done. This is where taking a good hard look at our data systems comes into play. To use data and make evidence-based decisions, not only do we need systems that link up and connect, but they need to roll up to the Chancellor's office in a timely manner so we get current data and can help colleges with this work, as well as providing training and support so we have staff on the campuses, on the colleges that can do real evidence-based research. Commitment 5, taking ownership of goals and performance. You're doing that today, actually, step 1. This, as I mentioned yesterday, we heard very strongly that this was important, but we also heard concern from the field about initiative fatigue and about being held responsible and criticized for things beyond their control, such as college readiness, such as funding for colleges and for the Chancellor's office. So it's very important to note that these goals and performances are geared around unifying the system and motivating us and a shared vision for the system, and not to blame. Commitment 6, encourage innovation. Encourage campuses and colleges to take risks, to try new things, not just in the areas of technology, but in the areas of how we deliver courses and education and services to our students. And then finally, the last commitment asks the system to take responsibility for initiating conversations with our partners in student success, with K-12, with our university systems, with our employer colleagues. We don't have a lot of structures that support that work and encourage that work, so someone needs to step into that breach, and we think the community colleges, as the linchpin in the education continuum, is well positioned to do that. Again, promise programs are a great example of this, as have been the work that the system has done in developing the associate degrees for transfer.
Thanks, Sandy. Gary, I think you wanted to comment on something.
Well, from my perspective, it just doesn't seem like this goes far enough in terms of behavioral terms about how we're actually going to do this. You know, like for instance, number 2, when you say increase 35%, and then you go to the commitments and it says raise awareness. I would think that, I'm just using this as an example, you should have 1, 2, and 3 under that. How are we going to raise that awareness? What specifically are we going to do so that we can measure whether it was successful or not? These terms seem a little bit, you know, in line with what we want to do, but I don't think they go far enough in behavioral terms so we can measure our success.
Right.
So I think that's a great first comment, because I need to explain how we're looking at this document. So from a practical or logistical point of view, what we'd like to see is for the board to adopt these large, broad goals, and then for the Chancellor's Office team to come back to you with the Chancellor's Office steps that we're going to take to achieve these goals.
Oh, okay.
What we didn't want to do is lock down specific work or interventions or solutions in the document, because those may change over time as we adjust to circumstances, and we want to have the flexibility to come back to the board with our implementation plan that may need to adjust over time. So you will get, if you adopt these goals or whatever goals you adopt, we will come back to you with an implementation document that gives you the information that you just requested. You know, steps 1, 2, 3, however many steps that the Chancellor's Office is going to take to try to achieve these goals. And that, you know, as I said, it may change year to year, it may change over time, it may not change, but that's why we didn't want to lock in those measures in this document up front.
Okay.
Other comments? I'll tee off of that a little bit, because I think the 6 goals are really specific, and I like that about that. You can measure that. The 7 commitments are kind of vague, right? I mean, to me, they're more themes. I mean, I understand why you use the term commitments, but they strike me as themes. And I was trying to, I don't like 7 of anything because nobody can remember 7.
It's a lucky number.
I know, but, so, you know, if I had done this, I probably would have done 4, because Chief Bratton once told me that people can only remember 3 things. So if you're a leader, at most you want to give people 4 goals, because they can't really remember much more than 3. And he was, you know, one of the better executives I've ever met. But that being the case, I think each of those 7 commitments exemplify a theme that's important. And the first one, focus relentlessly on students' end goals, was really powerful. I also looked at that and went back and looked at, if you look at the front of our agenda as a Board of Governors, what our mission is, it actually doesn't mention students. It says we're going to be a partner with colleges to do something, 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 but it never mentions students. And it struck me that if these are goals that the Board of Governors chooses to adopt, we may want to look at our own mission statement to better reflect that students are at the center of what we do. Even though we are providing service and support to the districts and to the colleges, really it's in the service of helping students achieve their goals. So on the other commitments, I was trying to pull out things that, like number 2, always designed to decide with the student in mind. What does that really mean? It's about alignment, it's about technology, it's about communicating your goals, it's about customer service. 3, which is pair high expectations, high support, that's really the basic skills reform and trying to advocate for better financial aid and support services. 4, foster use of data, inquiry, and evidence. That's exactly what it sounds like. That one's very, very accurate. Take ownership of goals and performance. Really the high-level takeaway on that one, I thought, was trying to drive down goals at the district and college level. It doesn't come out and say it, but that's really what's embedded here. And then enable action and thoughtful innovation. I took that as be flexible and take things to scale. That's what I tried to take away of, because otherwise it's a little vague. And then the last one, I take that as we need a new master plan. That's how I translated these 7 things, because they were too vague for me, other than the first one, to really communicate what we're doing there. That doesn't mean that they're not stated in the most diplomatic and professional way, but I couldn't wrap my head around the 7 themes. They just seemed a little bit squishy to me. So those are my thoughts. Anybody else have other comments? So let me walk us through what I think we're going to do the rest of the day. This was really just like a refresh, so we could remember 6 goals, 7 themes, or 7 commitments. That's 13. Can you remember all of them? Okay. So the next thing.
I'm good for 3.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Connie. What we thought we might do is actually take a little break for people to grab a snack or something, and then when we come back, we're going to get a presentation on data, because so much of what we're talking about is data-driven. Have a discussion about that, and then there'll be a brief presentation, right, Eloy, on what guided pathways mean. We've heard a lot about it, but I think it's a chance for this board to have a deeper dive on guided pathways. Some of us have read the book about it, but not all of us have. I think this is a way to kind of take a 200-page book and have it condensed into a very brief presentation.
You'll have one of the authors.
That's right. It'll be great. And then we'll be circling back up into what do we want to do with these goals and commitments. That's how I'd like to. So I'm kind of turning the agenda upside down, but I'm the chair. I need to do that. Yeah, Jeff, what do you?
I did want to add, since I wasn't here for the vote yesterday.
That's right. Okay.
A point, though, to say how pleased I am with the direction that we're going. This is exactly the type of leadership and vision that we had hoped when we went through that whole process of selecting a chancellor and developing a plan for the future. And so, and much of what we had built into the expectations as a board are now being translated effectively into a plan forward. I agree that there's still a lot to be worked out, but I also want during the course of the day to continue to see the role of the Board of Governors, not in just adopting
I agree.
and adapting and responding to what's presented to us, but then what is our accountability role? Besides just holding the chancellor accountable, there were lessons, I think, learned from the success of the Student Success Task Force and the associate degrees for transfer programs that we might be able to use to communicate a system-wide accountability, and that is driven by the board as well. So I'm very pleased and excited to see the direction that we're going, to see a lot of the focus and what we've been trying to achieve. Now we have a roadmap in development, and so if I was there yesterday, I would have voted yes.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. Well, this may be in the beating a dead horse category, but for those of you here yesterday, I do still have a problem with the decreasing the units to completion goal. I don't think it's aggressive enough. I really think that's the one goal that is completely under our control. It's something that the colleges ought to be able to fix more easily than guaranteeing that 35% are going to transfer and all that sort of stuff. And it just I don't know if I just think that we ought to try and be a little more aggressive about making sure that that students aren't taking courses that don't get them to where they want to go. I mean, it's kind of the heart of the whole pathways thing. It's sort of a canary in a coal mine type of data point. And I don't know if I'd like to hear if that, if that's unreasonable, and see if others agree.
This is just automatically on, right?
I think so.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So,
Watch your sidebars.
so while I really appreciate this, trying to lower the number of credits to completion, I just want us to be really cautious, because at the end of this, we have a student who may or may not have gotten the services that they need, who may or may not quite know exactly what they're doing. So it's one thing to have a goal in mind, and I am an alumni of a community college, and it took me forever to get through school, and if I had not been taken the advice of someone who said go see a counselor, it would have taken me, I would still be in community college maybe. So I just want us to be really cautious that whatever we do in that area, that at the end of that, the student isn't penalized for the number of credits they've taken for lack of being able to get the services they need.
I think for each of these goals, it probably makes sense after we do a little bit more on the presentations on data and stuff to revisit each of them and really, I said it earlier, but about what are the implications of that, right? What does it take to move this 9 units down? What does that mean, and what are the ways to do that? And I had an opportunity to talk to John from this academic center, a couple other people on a break yesterday about what would the reality look like. And if you guys, John, you want to say a couple words? Are you, as I know you were kind of angling to do that yesterday, and then just gives you some of the sense of the experience at the campus level of what it really means. Yeah, the big kids table.
I'm John Stanskis. I'm with the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. Good morning, Board of Governors and Chancellor. Specifically about the number of units, there are a lot of things to think through, and I think you were trying to get to that. When we look at reducing that number, I think that's a reasonable goal to try to reduce that number, but there are some things that a dramatic reduction of that number would entail that may not be in the best interest of our students. When we look at other states and what they've done in terms of basic skills reform, a lot of those lowest sequences become non-credit. That would dramatically reduce the number of units students earn because there is no credit attached to that anymore. But we have to think carefully if that serves the needs of our students who are dependent on financial aid to go to school, because that's not how financial aid is structured for our students. And would that create a barrier to any education for them by simply kicking them out? We heard from some of the students today talking about earning 2 associate's degrees, that they are interested in areas that don't completely align with one course of study in that way. We have articulation agreements with the CSU and the UC that we have worked really hard through CID processes to align and ensure they'll take them, but the course-to-course articulation from campus to campus has often required us to add units to courses to ensure that we're covering everything that our articulation partners want in there, to ensure that that course will go course to course if the student isn't pursuing an ADT where they have to accept it. And we have some other regulatory issues around our high unit majors in STEM fields and some of our CTE fields where we only offer courses for credit for lecture or lab. We do not have a discussion section. We do not have any other mechanism to pay for that time with students and account for that time besides adding units to it. And many institutions of higher education do have other ways to account for that. And so I think that that may just give you some practical examples of the unit requirement and some of the considerations when looking at a goal like that.
Whoa, just, woo, you want to talk?
When
Okay.
you say there's going to be a data presentation, will
Yeah.
some of the things like that John just talked about get covered?
So in today's presentation, we're going to focus on, we will not focus on unit accumulation. The presentation is going to focus on a very discrete set of data to give you an idea of the impact we can have by using data to drive some of our policy making. I mean, certainly we could have had a presentation on credit accumulation, but this will be on specifically the use of multiple measures.
But the point being, what he's saying,
It's on.
oh, okay. What he's saying is absolutely true. There are all these different kinds of pathways currently.
Right.
That because of them, students are led to take more units than what you typically might assume they would have to take. And some of them have even done an ed plan. So, I mean, there are a number of different kinds of things we really would have to look at if that's the goal. And to work that out with the colleges in terms of, how can we all do this shift? And then if you, like he said, with, say, the guide, with the ADTs or the 21 pathways for the UC, you'd have to have partnerships with them too to see how could we handle this.
Well, and let me take that comment in John's very important comments and try to give you an idea of how we can approach this choice. With all of these goals, there's going to have to be a number of different reforms and actions the Chancellor's office working with the colleges take. Even to reduce the units by what we're proposing, we would have to address the things that John just mentioned and you just mentioned. But I don't want to deter you from setting a goal that's difficult and that requires the Chancellor's office to work with the leadership of the system or the leadership of other systems to try to accomplish. Having said that, we have had a similar internal struggle over this and other goals. Is it aggressive enough? Is it too aggressive? I think certainly reducing the number of excess credits, I think we could all agree, is a necessary goal. It's the only way we're going to get our students to complete their educational goal in a more timely fashion. For me, and I think for my team at this moment, we think that for now the goal is aggressive enough. It gives us a chance to begin to work with our partners, like the Senate, like the CSU. But I don't think over time that we should shy away from pushing the Chancellor's office staff to do more. Because, quite frankly, I should be engaging with the CSU and the UC and getting them to understand the needs of our students. I should be talking to the legislature and the governor about state policy that would better reflect what we're trying to accomplish. Those are things that we should do. And I think whether you're in the CSU, the community college, or the UC, all three of those systems want to reduce time to completion. So this is the right discussion to have. I think it's the right goal to have. We can certainly come back to you in a year or two and come back to you and say, we think we can be more aggressive. We think we can be less aggressive. But even if you decide to be more aggressive now, we think we can still manage the concerns that have been raised. And if we think in a year that there is no way we're going to accomplish this because it's hurting students, then we will tell you that.
So one suggestion is, you're asking the Board of Governors to adopt these goals, and we don't have the same access to the data and all of the drill down, but something that is as important as this and so many nuances and data points you have to consider, it might be worth it to have a couple or 2 or 3 board members spend the next month. We meet again in September when you'll bring this back to come back to us with a recommendation to the full board. And I just had a sidebar with Tom. This is one of those things where, Tom, I don't know if Joseph you'd want to do that, but it's just a few of you get together with Chancellor staff and talk about it and really chew over the numbers and how do you get to 9? Can we be more aggressive and what are the implications? And then come back to us with this report might be a good way for us to drill down to this goal. I know Tom is interested in that. Are there others who might want to work with him on that task? All right, thank you, Mon. That's great.
And I'm willing to be involved.
That would be great, Joseph. Okay. So I've got Tom, Mon, and Joseph. And the idea is not to, I mean, you guys don't have to tell, but just the three of you get together with some Chancellor staff and really get into the details behind it. And I'm sure that if we reached out to our friends at the Academic Senate, they'd be willing to work with you.
We will make sure that they're included in the
That would be
discussion.
great. Thank you. Back to kind of the numbers, and Sandy, I asked you about that 2.4 million because I didn't write it down when you first said it. On the second one, the transfers, you said it would result in 1.1 million BAs. One way to track, and I think as we come with the implementation strategy, is when we talk about percentages, that's one thing, but then when you translate it into actual numbers of students, it's overwhelming. Right? It is enormous. And I think for the purposes of a nice pithy statement talking about 20% makes sense. I guess if I were to think about the issue of accountability and reporting that Jeff Baum mentioned, I'd be very interested in having reports backs come to us with numbers, with actual numbers. So if Vaughn's data is telling us that we need 2.4 million, I always refer to them, no, we need 1 million middle skilled certificates, right? So that's etched in my brain for all the work we did with the Strong Workforce Task Force. Well, how many are we getting every year? And then how many more do we need to add? This is a percentage, but what is that in terms of real people? Because when you get to volume and you understand that you're talking about an increase, that's 2.4 million tolerant, what was the base, right?
It's in 8 years. I mean, we're looking.
Right. Although some of these are set for 5-year horizons. So that, I think, is important to translate into actual numbers to give us a sense of the magnitude. That's probably true of all of these, but the first two in particular strike me as like particularly large.
But like with number 2 again,
Yeah.
I think it would be important for us to know how did this data get collected, and is the data accurate about the number of students that really are transferring, who transferred ultimately from a community college, even if they took a semester out, because they finished their coursework in the fall and they're waiting to, just different kinds of things that could affect the data. Mm-hmm. And to know that we have accurate data.
Oh, and so to that question, our consultants took quite a bit of time, not only working with the Chancellor's Office data research folks, but with also with Public Policy Institute of California, Hans Johnson's team in particular, as well as they relied on data from others, such as from the National Clearinghouse to Georgetown Center for the Workforce. So we have, at least internally in the Chancellor's Office, in our research team, have confidence in the data. We had multiple opportunities to review the data. So at least from the Chancellor's Office team, we feel confident that these numbers are as accurate as we can get them now. I think we can get them more accurate over time, particularly as we add capacity in the Success Center and in our own research team. And certainly if there are changes that we feel we need to make because we have more accurate data, we'll be happy to come back to you and ask for those changes to be made. I mean, we also need to think about this document as a living document. We may need to come back and amend some of these numbers based on circumstances. I mean, if we face another major recession like we did, God forbid, 2007, we may need to revisit some of these. We may need more graduates. Who knows? And the other thing I'd like to point out is number 2 talks about transfers, increasing the number by 35% annually. That gets to the point that we need more bachelor's degrees in California. Well, we may be able to help meet that goal through the production of bachelor's degrees ourselves. So we may need to think about these over time, but at least this sets out an initial set of goals that we can revisit from time to time as we learn more, as we develop our team, and as we get better data. So I certainly would not sit here and say that we are 100% accurate in all of our data, because a lot of our data depends on the input of the data.
And
where
the
it's
focus
housed.
is on transfer in UC and CSU, but do we have any access to data of students who choose to go to
Yes.
a private college? Because I know from my own college where I work, we have a lot of people who apply to Mills College
Right.
because there's many scholarships where you get full tuition. And a student will say, if I'm getting full tuition to a private school that has good quality, why would I go to a CSU where you know what I'm saying? So.
Well, certainly, we do have access to every college and university that participates in the National Clearinghouse. We have all of that data available to us, so we have a pretty good idea of the number of students that go to private nonprofits who participate, private for-profits like University of Phoenix. So the reason we're highlighting UC and CSU is because that is the majority of our students, and that is the closest place that we have agreements with and relationships with. Now, having said that, we are working with AICCU, the organization that represents most of the private nonprofits in California. We're trying to create an associate's degree for transfer with them. We're working with other university partners, everything from ASU to you name it. And we're going to try to create every opportunity we can for our students. But, for now we felt that to most Californians, they look at UC and CSU as the primary transfer partner. We're going to highlight them first. But if you wanted to expand that to
But
all.
at least to put that in our thinking, that
Yes.
it isn't that students aren't transferring.
Right.
So, is it possible that by the end of the day, when we visit all these goals, that at least for number 1 and number 2, we might be able to get some of the baseline numbers? Is that easily pulled out?
I think we can work on that.
Yeah, so for example, if you look at number 1, increase by at least 20% the number of students annually who acquire associate degrees, credentials, certificates, or specific skill sets. That's really undefined, that prepare them for an in-demand job. So if we were to say, what's our baseline today? Like, what is that number? I don't know what that number is. I have no idea what that
So
number
you want
is.
like an annual,
Yeah, because
we
if
would
we're
need to
saying-
increase annually to hit that goal.
Right, but what is it, what's today?
What is the base
What's
year?
the base upon which we're adding 20%? What's the actual number? 1.1 million? I don't know. I don't know if that number exists. And it would be nice, best, if we could break it down by, and of that whatever number, this many are the AAs, this many are credentials, this many fall into the certificates or specific skill sets. You can probably break them down. I just don't know what the number is. So if we can't get it by the end of the day, that's okay, but it would be really, really great to start to end the day with those numbers so we know what we're talking about, right? Likewise, on the number 2, increased by 35% the number of CCC students system-wide transferring annually to UC or CSU. What is that number today? How many annually? I guess the last number would be last year?
The last number we would have numbers for is
2015 probably?
the yield
This
from
coming fall.
16,
We would have that already?
17, it'd probably have to be 15, 16.
Yeah.
Would be the most accurate number.
So I have a question because on our campuses, there's a number and it's transfer ready. And all of those students are eligible to transfer,
Right.
but many of them don't. I don't know what that number is. And so it would, for me, it would also, and I don't know the reasons why they don't transfer. Is it financial? Life's challenges? So we may have a number that's bigger, but if we knew, if we had some knowledge about, okay, those reasons, and then working with our partners, we could increase that number just by virtue of moving a student who's transfer ready into a seat at Sac State. So it'd be helpful to know.
We can break
Are we
that out.
talking about sort of the new students coming in and making that happen, or are we also talking about those students who recently graduated and are transfer ready? And to what extent can we put them in that column of transfer?
We'll break out both numbers for you.
And just to be clear, what we're saying here in number 2, this is a change from what the Chancellor's office normally states. Normally, we state as a goal increasing the number of transfer-ready students.
Right.
We are saying that we need to own the transfer. that is a more aggressive goal, because that doesn't just require us to get them transfer ready.
Exactly.
That requires us to work with our transfer partners to create more opportunities. So that means, if when we're advocating for our students, we are not only advocating for resources within our system, but we are advocating to ensure that there are transfer slots available in the CSU and the UC. That's my bias. I believe that if we're going to say we're transferring students, then we own it from beginning to end. And then that puts the onus on myself, on every college president, to work with our partners. So that is a difference, and I think maybe that's part of the discomfort or confusion as to why we're stating it that way. But basically what it would mean is not only increase the number of transfer-ready students, but increase the number of transfer-ready students who are successfully transferring.
And there will be ongoing reports about this? Because, we do know that there can even be problems with that our students didn't envision encountering. I know of a recent situation that somebody told me about of somebody who was accepted to San Jose State. Mm-hmm. But when they got the final transcript and saw that it was a kinesiology major, they revoked it because he didn't have certain prerequisites completed. So, there's all these other kind of unfortunate.
There are, and you're absolutely right. And I think we not only, have to work on this macro issue, but we also have to be more intrusive on behalf of our students. That it's not just the job of the counselor or the articulation officer. It should be the job of all of us to ensure that our students are handed off to the campus that they're accepted to, and that they are successful in completing their transfer process.
So how are folks doing? I think we want to just kind of get your head into the goals, and that last explanation was really helpful, Eloy, because it gave a sense of like the really dramatic shift in expectations that we're talking about with this document. You can read these and say, yeah, okay, 20%. But the fact that what we're measuring is different is important, and I just wanted us to all get our heads around that. And for me, the data is super important. So when I say 2.4 million, I know what that means, right? And how does that distribute around the state? So if you guys are in a good shape, why don't we take a little break to grab refreshments, snacks, and then we'll come back and we'll have John, you'll be ready to roll with your presentation on data. Does that sound good? Is everybody okay with that? Gary, I'm looking at you. What?
I'm looking at you.
I'm looking at you. I want to make sure you're happy. I want to make sure you're with me because I want you here. I want you here. So give about 5-10 minutes to grab our food and then we'll get started again. Okay? Thanks.
I like that.